Greetings, programs, and welcome to another edition of the Awesome Friday podcast. My name is Matthew, and with me, as always, is Simon. Say hello, Simon.
Hello.
Oh, so dramatic.
No, it was my work's social last night, and we went to a very nice place on the drive called called Community Pizza. And Community Pizza had a very exhaustive cocktail list as well. And I don't know, I know you're not a drinker anymore, and I'm trying not to be as much as I used to be, but sometimes when you're in a situation where I've been working with these people for a year and a half, and this is only the third time I've met them in real life. And
You did
sometimes
start working with them, during a
yeah,
global stay-at-home order,
that's
basically.
right. Just as they went fully remote, I started working. So I know them really well, but not really face to face. And I'm like, even before the pandemic, I didn't find social situations the most comfortable. I've never have, and um, after the pandemic, well, I mean, since the pandemic, I should say, I feel like my social skills have decreased even further. So I am very grateful. I don't know how you do it, but you have natural social skills. I've seen you in a room of people. I am very grateful to alcohol for picking up that sort of slack for me. And so I'm
For those of
presented,
you at home, this is a wonderfully long way of Simon explaining that he is incredibly hungover right now.
you could say that and you'd be correct. But I basically went through the entire cocktail menu bar one, and I had a couple of beers as well and some pizza, and then I went to watch Come From Away at Queen Elizabeth, and it's pretty good going to watch a musical, a very upbeat musical when you're incredibly drunk. That's only an hour and a half long with no intermission. Like that's kind of a perfect way to let your like drunkenness kind of just exist, and it was good. The show was lovely and it was very, very Canadian. Do you know that in Eastern Canada they all talk like Irish people? I
Yeah,
maybe
it's
understood
called a
maybe about.
maritime act. Did you not know that?
Oh, I kind of did, but I
Yeah, did you
I
not
understand.
realize that Canada contains multitudes, Simon?
I look. I live in Vancouver, so I'm pretty sure that I have experienced the entirety of Canada. Okay,
Yeah.
but I understood maybe 70% of it. And Come From Away, if you're unaware, is a musical about 9/11. And part of me didn't really want to go to watch a musical. It's not really about 9/11. It's about the planes that were diverted. Apparently, Newfoundland had a massive airport at one point, and then
Mhm.
when the American airspace suddenly closed down, they sent 30 something planes to this airport because
Yep.
if there were any more bombs, there'd be fewer people than if they landed in Toronto or something.
Yep.
And so it's basically a very heartwarming and true story about how this tiny town came together, and basically their population doubled overnight, and they fed them all and put them up for 5 days, and people fell in love, and it's all just very, very. I I don't know. It feels very stereotypical, but it was very earnest without being cheesy, and I think that's a very difficult balance. So I enjoyed it. But
Oh, good.
let me tell you, when I woke up this morning, I was reminded of how many years it's been since I have drunk that much alcohol, and the years have not been friendly. So
Oh, yeah.
I've been clutching my tea most of the day.
I don't miss it like at all. So yeah.
Well, it's the hangover I can tell you from cocktails is a very different hangover from beer though, which I'm quite happy about. So
Yeah, I remember, and
that's
I
good.
still don't miss it.
But it was
So
nice. Community Pizza, excellent place. Recommended. The pizzas were lovely too. How are you? What have you been up to?
was I'm in the middle of a 12-week educational experience, which is 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and is a lot. So I have been
Mm-hmm.
doing that,
That.
and it's exhausting, but in a good way. But it's exhausting.
Are you
But
going to get your
again,
desk right
like,
at the end of this process?
I don't know. For context, Simon is talking about the fact that I ordered a sit-stand desk 4 weeks ago, and it was meant to have been delivered this past Monday, and I still don't have it. And I've actually haven't talked to you about this, but interestingly, and I'm not going to name the company. I'm sure that they have other problems, and this situation isn't resolved, and I'm not quite ready to like smack talk them. But I got an email from them at like 4 o'clock on Friday, being like, "Hey, how's that sit stand desk you received? And I got to come back and say, I didn't get it yet. And then
Oh,
someone emailed me back and went, we'll look into that for you. And now it's the weekend. So I assume I'm not getting it until Monday.
oh my God.
So yeah, it's
It's
interesting having spent
it's
so long doing customer service, understanding that the key to good customer service is honestly just like communication, like super basic communication. Like,
mm,
just not only let me know when the thing is like if there's going to be a delay, just tell me, like don't wait for me to complain about it, just be like, sorry,
mhm,
it's going to be delayed or whatever.
mhm.
Anyway, it's a whole situation and I hate it, but I literally have everything else I need for my workspace and it's all just sitting in boxes where my desk will eventually be. It's kind of it'll be
Oh,
funny
well,
at some point.
it gives you extra time to plan how much Star Trek art you're going to put around your desk, so that's good. It does serve a purpose.
That's quite true. That's quite
Mm.
true. And I did have some Star Trek art framed recently to put up around my desk. So
Ah, perfect.
there you go. Good. Awesome.
Excellent.
Well,
Okay, what should we
we're
talk about?
gonna we're gonna dive into as we are wont to do, two things this week. First up, we're gonna talk about a I believe big budget Korean science fiction movie that's coming out in theaters this coming week, I should say, and then we're going to talk about She-Hulk, which has started on Disney Plus this week. But we're going to start with Korean science fiction movie, which is in English called Alienoid. And Simon, do you want to give us just a quick,
Yes,
like
sunlight.
super quick? Sorry, I know this isn't. We're going to come back to what I'm about to say because it is part of my problem with this movie that I liked, but I don't think a quick synopsis is even possible. So I
Yeah, I was.
challenge you to give us a quick synopsis, sir.
Okay. Um, Humans are used as prisons for aliens without their knowledge or consent. When the aliens are put into the brains of humans, they don't control them. They're just like storage units. Um, and to make sure that none of the aliens escape, a robot that takes human form with his talking car sits around on Earth guarding the humans to make sure if anyone escapes, they free them. However, their job extends to all time as well, so they might nip off to 1300s Korea to hunt down and trap an alien that has wriggled free, if you like, of the human brain. And if it gets out of the brain, it dies. So you've got this
Uh, but it
character.
but it doesn't. Anyway, keep going.
Well, I mean, it anyway. So you've because this movie is three movies. This movie is like, what genre of this movie is this movie? And the movie says yes. Like
Yeah,
it's so you've got the space sci-fi element, and then you've got in the because there's lots of things that happen, but they're not in chronological order. So there's like the root of the guard's power ends up in a different time zone and becomes this blade that is wanted by these Taoist magicians who can do like crouching tiger magic leaps and air throws and cool like magic stuff.
yeah. There's a ton of wire fu in this movie because not only is
Yes.
there science fiction alien elements, there's also like medieval Korean wire fu
Yes.
magic, like straight up magic,
Yes.
which is actually
And
super interesting as a pitch.
it's brilliant. And apparently, this director, his last movie was just about time traveling Taoist monks who do magic. So I really want to find that.
Hmm.
And so you got these parallel things going on of the leader of the aliens who were like he tried to make the aliens rebel against their incarceration, starts causing trouble. So the guard is chasing him through time and through modern Korea and past Korea. And then we learn that the characters we see in past Korea are connected to some of the characters we've already seen in future Korea. And basically, it's a time travel sci-fi Taoist monk waifu martial arts fantasy adventure part one.
You left out
That's
you got it all right, except you left out comedy because it's also at
and
points and it's
absolutely,
a slapstick comedy at points.
and it's very funny. The comedy actually works, and it's a father-daughter story as well. So
A
um,
father, daughter, and their dog, who happens to be a robot talking car who can take any form.
and that's not even all of it. Like, that's without spoilers.
God, yeah, it really is, isn't it?
Can I just be like the first to say I understand when you watch this movie, as I get the feeling your reaction to this is going to be slightly less positive to mine, because I love Korean sci-fi to the point now where I'm thinking, should I start doing like Duolingo in Korean just to get the basis of basic like vocabulary? Because I watch things like this and Train to Busan and the
Space Sweepers. Space Sweepers was
Space
Korean.
Sweepers, which was one of my favorite sci-fis of the last like decade, and Peninsula, and just that Korean cinema is really, really good at taking a genre and doing something else with it. And
Hmm.
this is no exception in that it takes like 5 genres and tries to do something else with it. And I just, it's a hot mess that kind of doesn't come together. In fact, it doesn't come together totally, because it turns out
Yeah,
parts 1 and 2 were filmed simultaneously, and this is part 1. And this isn't like Empire Strikes Back, where there's some threads are drawn to a close and the next part introduced. It's like
yeah,
the
it
movie
just
ends.
stops.
The movie ends. I mean,
This
what
is
do you
actually
think?
my primary sort of like problem with the movie. Honestly, I think that like the weird genre mashup works. I think whether that's because of or in spite of itself is up for debate, but it works. But it and maybe part this is definitely at least partly my own fault for not looking into it before really watching it. But this is very much part one of two, and it just stops at the end of part one, and with no warning, that's a little bit jarring. And I definitely could have, like, to be fair, none of the marketing material that I was sent really indicated that it was going to be a part one, but a simple Google search would have revealed that it is a part one. Like now, when I will look to bring up the cast list, I see that like it is called in Korean. The English translation of the Korean title is Alien+human Part One, which is a much better title, just for
It
clarity's sake.
is. Alienoid is a bad title, and it doesn't do anything to describe what you're going to see. Like, it feels completely cut off from the reality of this film.
Yeah. And I imagine, like, I don't think I liked it quite as much as you did because, I mean, it does work, but there's some weird inconsistencies and there's some, especially in terms of like how the alien human relationship works when a human is a prison for an alien and the alien can't control the human except for the instances where they can control the human.
It's when the
Um,
brain becomes aware of the alien can take over.
right, of course that makes, and then but then also like the alien wants out of the human but can't survive outside of the human for
Oh.
longer than 5 minutes
until,
exactly.
until it can.
Um, like it's all very, I don't know what the right word is. It is a hot mess is a really good way to describe this movie. It's super
Yes.
fun. At 2 hours and 20 minutes long, it is also incredibly overstuffed to the point where I have no regrets having watched it and will say honestly that I enjoyed watching it. But so much happens in that 2 hours and 20 minutes. Like I couldn't tell you all of it. I can't,
Mhm.
I physiologically was unable to remember it all.
It doesn't let up, and
Like it
it
never
didn't.
lets up.
It didn't feel like 2 hours and 20 minutes, because it is the the director is like, and now we're going to do this, and now we're going to do this, and let's cut back over here, and let's do these new characters. The cast is so huge, and there's constantly new people being introduced, who are, many of them are magical without any introduction. Like, in a way, you get so used to Western cinema, especially this kind of genre, picking one thing and then just doing it like the hero's journey with it. And so it's really refreshing to me. I love seeing something new, and I think that's why I really enjoyed this, even though it doesn't. There's no like satisfactory resolution, because there's no resolution. But like you said, in Korea, this was even it was a massive hit. It made lots and lots of money, and it was known very, very much to everyone that it was a first part of two. And the I did kind of wonder, is this my westernized, like, am I judging this as being incomplete or non-satisfactory because I'm watching it through like this Western lens? But then I looked at some Korean reviews of it, and they all said exactly what we're saying. Like, people are going to get
Oh,
confused by the multiple people. People are going to get confused because it's not satisfactorily rounded up. The ideas are amazing, and the visuals are amazing, and the acting's good, but it doesn't like come together cohesively. So that made me feel a bit better because the Koreans are
yeah,
saying the same thing as we are.
yeah. Because like unlike something like, there's definitely been some big two-part epic films in Western like Kill Bill is a good example, and so are the Matrix
Mm.
sequels
Yeah,
are a
that
good
reminds me of this.
example,
Yeah.
right? But they all end at a moment where like at least some of the plot is tied
Hmm.
up, and
Hmm.
then they ask one big central question that leads into the next thing, right? And this just kind of stops.
Well, this does, you know, what's really interesting is that it does the second thing. There's a fundamental twist at the end, very, very end of this film that you can kind of see coming
Oh, you
about
can
half
see
an
it
hour
coming.
earlier.
I will say this: you can see that twist coming from a mile away.
But
There's
it's a
two
bit
big
confusing.
reveals that happen in this movie that I'm like, as and maybe it's just an artifact of me watching a ton of movies, but like there are two big twists in this movie that like I could have told you from like the second time each of those characters were on screen, basically.
Yeah.
Like it's not a like it's interesting because for a movie that's so original and has such a weird and wonderful and a world that I've never quite seen this combination of factors in before, parts of the plot are very predictable. So like the world building is great and the performances are great, but the plot is, I mean, the details are all super convoluted and complicated, but the basic plot is fairly straightforward,
Hmm.
which to be fair is a very difficult line to walk, I think.
I I'm not sure straightforward is the right word though. Like, when you watch this movie, it absolutely bends over backwards not to be straightforward. To the point of like confusion of on who people are and what's going on and how the parallel threads of current career and past career are not really brought together till quite late in the into the final act.
Uh, yeah, but
And
also like there's one big reveal in terms of what you're talking about in terms of like characters in the modern time frame and characters in the 1300s time frame that like it's meant to be like a big reveal at the end, but
mhm,
the main one of the two main characters in the 1300s, as soon as I saw them on screen, I was like, oh, that's
right, right,
clearly
right,
X person from this other,
right.
it's and there's the second twist, which also mainly has to do with the other lead character from the medieval period. As soon as it became clear who the other lead was, which again was basically immediately for me, I was like, okay, so this guy is going to turn out to be the other big reveal that is clearly being built. Like the
Yeah,
plot is not complicated. Again, all of the details
yeah.
are super complicated, but the basic through line is not complicated at
Okay,
all.
yeah, that's okay. That's fair. The way it's told is not straightforward, but it is. Yeah, the twists are not. God, they're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. But
Yeah, I
I
guess
really.
where I differ is that like I quickly looked at a couple of reviews because I don't really like doing that until I've had my own thoughts out there. But
Mhm.
a lot of them are talking about how the plot is convoluted and difficult to follow, but the world is super interesting. And I sort of had not quite the opposite reaction, but I was like, no, the plot was very easy to follow. But can the aliens survive outside the humans or not? Because you tell me both of those things
Mhm.
at different points, and like the details are over the top convoluted and not consistent. Um, but at the end of the day, it ends up being so much fun that this is all really nitpicky. Like it's a fun movie, and you
Yeah.
should, if you get a chance to see it and you want to just have like a good 2 hours of the movies, this is going to do that for you. If you're on board with like big storytelling and big performances and big ideas, you are going to have a good time watching this movie.
Yeah, totally. Like it swings constantly for the benches. Like, what's the baseball idiom? Did I get that one right?
Yeah.
It like I say, it's a long movie, but it doesn't feel it because it's constantly like overlapping with itself, and I
You
really
you
enjoy
say that, but also there was a moment where I was like, "Man, the story is really like wrapping up. Like, I wonder like how much time is left in the movie. Like, this plot is clearly coming to it." And I was at like literally the 1 hour and 10 minute
I
mark.
know exactly. I did exactly the same thing. I know exactly where you were.
Yeah,
But I really liked. There's an actress from Korea who's also she was the captain in Space Sweepers, and she is a very cool character in this. She's called
you mean Kim Tae-ri?
Lee Hani, I think. No, Kim Tae-ri was the aunt. It was Lee Hani, the who played insert name here.
Oh, I thought Kim Tae-ri was because Kim Tae-ri was in Space Sweepers too. Pretty sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, Leon Kim Tae-ri.
Kintari,
Yeah,
yes, Kintari, yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
anyway, I enjoyed the nice thing with this that I find with all like Korean genre is that the actors are always like completely into it, like really sell the coolness of it. There's one character who is
Or the
very very
ridiculous.
cool, yeah, ridiculous, but not like what do you call that? Not like mug, not what's the word? Not mugging it. Sorry, my brain is not working. I particularly enjoyed the two Taoist magicians. Like they're not husband and wife, but they're together, and the comedy between those two as they could sort of interact with the story and get involved really worked for me. Like throughout, I
Mm-hmm.
thought they were really really cool. And the main actor Kim Woo-bin um,
Who plays the
plays
guard? Yeah.
multiple versions of like himself for whatever reason. He plays different like versions of the same character, and he really impressed me with his versatility of his vocal control and his body control, and that was really really
He's
good.
he's not really playing multiple versions of guard.
Well,
He's
well
playing
that
because so he's playing guard, and then he's
try not to
also
spoil it.
playing like the his robot talking car can also project a an avatar, and
Yes,
the robot
yeah,
talking car chooses to look like the guard. It's
yeah.
this movie's a lot. There's a lot going on in this movie.
I
But
mean,
yeah, Kim Woo
they
Bin
were all really different.
is similarly is great. I actually really liked and I'm going to mispronounce this, so I'm sorry. But Ryu Jun Yo, I think is how you say it. He played a character called Murek, who's like one of the two main characters
Yeah, he's really good.
in the 1300s, who's like a wandering swordsman and magician sorcerer type person, who's kind of a goofball,
I
who's
loved his
on a
introduction.
who's kind of a goofball and like on this quest to find the magic blade that turns out to be the MacGuffin from both. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, he does a really good job of selling like the super serious moments, some of the most serious
Mhm.
moments, some of the most interesting interaction moments between like not quite romance but like proto romance moments between like these two characters, and he also does the best job of selling like the utter goofiness of the rest of
Mhm.
this movie. And I feel like that is a line that there's there's a number of people that do that in this movie, and
Mhm.
I couldn't name you any North American actors that I think could pull that off. I mean, I'm sure there's some that I'm not
Mm.
thinking of right now, but like for the number of people who do that so well in this, who just like commit so well and pull off all the things they're asked of, it's
Oscar
hard to
Isaac.
imagine. Yeah, maybe I don't know.
He'd do it.
And to your point that it's not ridiculous, I remind you, sir, that uh, Murek has two companions who are people who are also cats who he
No, the
pulls out
cats
of a
who are people.
they're
Yeah.
cats who are people who he also pulls out of a magical fan.
Yeah, they're not
So
cats, they're illustrations of cats that become
yeah,
real
they're
cats that become people.
yeah, and while they're people, they behave as cats, which is takes a bit of getting used to. I will say, there's definitely points where he's like trying to have a serious conversation, and there's these two middle aged, like older Korean men outside going meow
Meowing.
meow. oh look, I can eat a fish head. Meow. like, like there's a lot. I think
But
I
by
think
that point, the
I mean, by
whole
that point, if you're
movie,
not on board, like you're just
yeah,
never going to be.
but
But
it's not a surprising turn. Like the movie at the very, very beginning, it's got a brilliant opening sequence, and the whole movie is very clear in its intentions, which is to throw an incredible amount of shit at you within these genres, and most of it sticks. I just wish there had been just the slightest like resolution of some of its story threads um, going into part two. But I'm sure when part two comes out next year, because it's already shot, that as a companion piece, it's basically probably just going to pick up exactly
I
where this one stops. And apparently, the second one is almost completely about the Taoists hunting down the blade, so that we see a chase of sorts at the end of part one, and the it sounds like the second part is just a continuation of that, with the magic as more of a forefront. So,
well, that makes sense in that, like, without too many spoilers, the end of this one definitely brings all the characters together in one place.
mhm,
So that makes sense to me.
yep.
And you're right. Like I, when it comes out, I will want to see part two, and I'm sure that watching them back to back will be a thing that you can do, and it'll be a better experience for it. But yeah, watching the first one in isolation, it just kind of stops, and that's a little bit frustrating. But it is, for the 2 hours and 20 minutes you're watching it, it is a good time. So
It
take
really is.
and
Yeah.
it is releasing in theaters this coming week too, so you can go see it on a big screen. And I kind of wish that I'd been able to do that. We watched
I
this at home, and I
yeah.
I wish I'd been able to see this in a movie theater.
I'm going away soon, and if it's still on when I come back, I will be going to see this in cinema. Like it is a huge movie, and it needs a huge screen. It got an IMAX release in Korea as well, and that's very fitting.
Yeah.
and and it's really refreshing. Like one of my biggest complaints about any kind of sci-fi, we watch a lot of sci-fi and a lot of MCU stuff, and I sometimes wish it would just take more risks and just do different things within the genre. And this film is nothing but risks. Like it takes a story that we've seen a million times before and just throws everything at it, and it sticks. Like it's well shot. The I thought the combat was wonderful, and
Mhm.
the editing's great, and all the technical aspects work really, really well. And I would love to see a bit more of this uh, wild side of what sci-fi and what fantasy can do in more Western sci-fi. Do you know what it really reminded me of was the Matrix, the second and third Matrix? Yeah, but I also thought a lot about Fifth Element and how Luc Besson took a lot and threw a lot into that movie with lots of genre turns as well. And this kind of gave me the same kind of feeling as Fifth Element.
Yeah, it's a shame he turns out to be a garbage person. But
It's difficult. Luc Besson was such an important director for me. Like Leon the Professional and all of his movies, or
the
before that, really fundamental to me when I was learning film and making film. And he was my favorite director for a long time. And it's very difficult to learn more and more about him.
That's
And
true. Me
sort of
too.
balance that. Yeah.
But
Anyway,
Choi Dong-hoon, who did this one, I haven't heard anything bad about him, and I just want to see more of his movies now. So
yeah,
if
100%.
they're even half as ballsy and weird as this, then I have a feeling
Mhm.
I will enjoy most of them.
That's the thing, you know. This is the kind of movie where even if it doesn't work for you, you still come out of it thinking, "Well, I haven't seen anything like that before." It's still a good time, even if you come out thinking it wasn't like satisfying.
Well, and
And
even
and
like it's also that you're talking about how like they're just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, and like they're throwing so much at the wall, something you like is going to stick
Mhm,
because they're just
mhm.
throwing so much.
Yeah,
Because I can't stress enough, so much happens in this movie. Like there's very few quiet pauses. It's basically all go 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 go.
mhm.
And yeah, not to also beat a dead horse, but another great lesson in pull the camera back and let me watch what the actors are doing when
Oh,
they fight.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
holy shit,
And some very decent Iron Manning as well.
yeah. When
Uh,
some of the visual effects are just
yeah,
like immaculate. Like there's
yeah,
a
really
spaceship
good.
chase
Yeah.
through Seoul that is like looks
Mhm.
real. It just looks real.
I love that. It was unintentional comedy, but there's a the spaceship looks like a razor, and it goes through. Nothing stops it, and it's slowly chasing this police car, and it's slicing through like huge apartment blocks and buildings, and there's people running, and about 5 minutes later, they try to draw them away because like, oh, people could get hurt. I'm like, uh, I got something to tell you. People
Yeah,
are hurt. But
that's
no,
true.
the effects are excellent, really, really excellent. So
Yeah.
good job. So what
Well,
are you going to give this one? Like
so
giving
what do you?
something like this
Yeah.
stars feels a little reductive, doesn't it? But what are you going to give it?
I mean, for me, it's a pretty good. It's a three. It's a high three, but it's a three. I don't. I liked it. I didn't. I think probably if I had to change, if it had any resolution, I might be tempted to give it a four. But it's a
Hmm.
because of its and just to be clear, I liked this movie. I enjoyed watching this movie, but because it's
Hmm.
slightly overwhelming and because it doesn't have any resolution, yeah, it's a three.
That's fair enough.
And you, sir, and you.
It's just crept into a four for me. I mean, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I really was on board. I enjoyed this, like the act of watching this so much. It's so uh, my kind of thing, and it's crept into four. And I thought a lot about the resolution when I researched it a little bit and saw that it was marketed as part one, and it is clearly a part one. Then it kind of softened my negativity towards the finale. But the just as an experience, it's something everyone should watch. There's so much good stuff in there, and it's so enjoyable to see all these different things and time threads and magic and wire fighting and sci-fi chases, and there's just so much in there. So it's a four for me.
Nice. Good. Well, that is Alienoid, which again is coming out in theaters in Canada on the 26th. That's this Friday of August. And it
Yep.
is confirmed to be playing. You need to check your local listings, but it is confirmed to be playing at theaters in basically every major city in Canada. So if you get the chance,
Yeah, good.
you
Go
should
see it.
you should go and see it because it's a good movie.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Sure is.
So let's move on, and we're going to move on to something that's already in progress, and you probably already heard about. But this week marked the debut of the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe television show, She-Hulk, starring Tatiana Maslany on Disney Plus worldwide. And we got to see the first four, and there's one out to the
Mm.
public now. So we're going to try and keep it as spoiler free as possible for those four, lest we
Yeah.
invoke the wrath of Disney. But yeah, let's talk about She-Hulk, Simon.
So what's the premise of She-Hulk? And then I'll tell you my problem with talking about She-Hulk. But what is it?
So She-Hulk in the series, as in the comics, her name is Jennifer Walters, and she is the cousin of Bruce Banner, who most of you, unless you've been living under some kind of cultural rock the past 15 years, um, is the Incredible Hulk. And they are cousins and they are acquainted. And in the first episode, it's a little bit different than the comics, but in the first episode, they are on a road trip, and uh, Banner he's in Banner form. He's got a thing to keep him in Banner form, which is helping him heal from the events of the prior movies we've seen him in. And they get into, long story short, they get into a car crash. He gets cut, she gets cut, and his blood gets into her, and she becomes a Hulk. She is also single female lawyer, and the show is basically single female lawyer, but she's
Single
a Hulk.
female lawyer.
And I'm just gonna say it right up front. I very much enjoyed the four episodes that we got to see. Uh, I think that it's hard to talk about all of it because the episodes are only 30 to 35 minutes, so it's hard to talk about everything we've seen without being a little bit spoilery. But it is very confident in its premise. It's very well shot. The CGI is a little bit dodgy, but everything else about it works so well that I didn't actually end up caring about that so much. um, Tatiana Maslany is friggin' hilarious as Jennifer Walters. And although I would say it takes probably till the second or maybe even the third episode to get like very funny. but I think it's going to be. I'm sure. I mean, it's Marvel, so I'm sure lots of people are going to watch it. But I very much enjoyed it. And what did you think? Just basic
So,
feelings.
I mean, my problems with this is that, as you said, we watched the first four back to back, and my feelings towards it are kind of a complete thing based on those four episodes. So I'm trying not to spoil anything past the first episode. But I just echo what you're saying. I actually like it way more than I thought I would. I going in, I wasn't convinced it was actually going to work as a concept because it's a very particular comic, isn't it? There's lots of fourth wall breaking. It's a very light character and a very light comic, and I was curious how that was actually going to translate. But I mean, they clearly had someone writing this who knew what they were doing, because they've captured a lot of that. And you're right in that I wish we could talk more about episode one because there's a moment from episode two where everything clicked together, and then from that point it works like gangbusters. And it's a moment that is maybe 3 seconds long, and it is just one of the most wonderful things that you've seen in any MCU show. So maybe we'll talk about that another time. But the cold open is actually a really good indication because it starts with Tatiana Maslany talking, like practicing her speech direct to camera and kind of being nervous after it and showing both sides of her character straight from the off. And this whole show is, to say it's carried by her is an understatement. Like, she is wonderful. She is a brilliant actress anyway, as anyone who's seen her in Orphan Black knows how talented she is. But she is just so natural and so giving and uh, absolutely captivating as a performer. You can't take your eyes off her. So as she's going through this journey in episode one, where very entertainingly she becomes Hulk, and Banner tries to teach her how to control her anger and control being a Hulk, all the things he's learned over 15 years. And she's like, dude, I'm a woman. I've been controlling my anger my whole life. Like, this
Yep.
is not a problem for me. And she learns very, very quickly to Hulk at will, and she still stays herself. And it's a lovely parallel. And sort of, it's a really nice way to encapsulate how much Hulk as a character has grown. If you go back to, um, so Ed Norton's Hulk was the first proper MCU Hulk, right? The one before that, the Ang Lee wasn't same
Yeah.
timeline or anything. But
It's an interesting setup because the Edward Norton one is the first MCU Hulk movie, and it's the second MCU or third MCU movie overall. Um, and it does one thing that actually one of my favorite things that an MCU movie has done, which is a weird thing to say of a movie that's generally not that well remembered, but because the Ang Lee Hulk movie wasn't that many years before it, they just eschew doing an origin story at all. There's a montage during the opening credits of the film that basically recreates the Ang Lee movie, and then it just starts with Banner on the run.
right,
Uh,
right, right.
and
But
he's from that point on he's unable to control the Hulk.
and so what's interesting, especially we see it very clearly in Avengers as well. If you compare, like, Hulk is a one note character, right? It smashes things, and the Avengers knew that and did really clever things by recognizing that Hulk is a smashing character with that brilliant line. And Banner's far more interesting. That's always been the interesting thing, that clash between Banner and Hulk. And then if you see how what they've done with that through the Thor movies and through the other Avengers movies, and where Hulk is right now, is a really interesting, like, 15 years of growth with this one note character that is now way more interesting to watch, even though
Hmm.
like he's not a force of nature anymore. And I, for one, I'd be quite interested to see Hulk going back to being dangerous, but that doesn't negate, like, what they've done with the character is actually really, really clever. So in the first episode of She-Hulk, he tries to make her go through the same thing, and she doesn't need to because as a woman, she's lived that so much of her life anyway. And I thought it was a really interesting way to sort of encapsulate Banner's growth, but also launch um, She-Hulk as herself as this person able to control this from the beginning. I thought it was really, really clever.
Yeah, and
And
actually,
it gets
there's a
out of the
whole
way.
there's a whole speech that she gives when he's like, "You need to control your rage," and she's like, "I control my rage every day because I get catcalled on the street, and if I smile in someone's general direction, and that they might stalk me or just get me murdered, like it's just the normal experience of being a woman." And I feel like, and I said this on Twitter yesterday or the day before, that like I I I think that's actually a really important speech for a lot of the dude bros who are going to be watching the show to hear.
Mm.
Like there's a lot of people I feel who should hear this and understand it. And there's been
Yeah.
a lot of pushback from dude bros on social media. I've had a few interactions already with people being like, oh, the MCU, there's no growth for Banner or for Abomination, and it's just like, just say you want them to be angry. Like it's so
I
much easier to
wish.
say you.
Oh, but I wish we could talk about how wrong that is, but we can't because it would be talking about Tim Roth and Abomination, and I would really, really love to, but we're just talking about the first episode. But
I mean, yeah, he doesn't
Abomination
show up until
has
what, the third episode, and
second, no,
it's
second, third. Uh,
yeah.
maybe it's
Either
maybe
way,
the main episode is third, yeah. But his
he's
growth
in.
is
Yeah,
hilarious.
he's hilarious, and I really like the direction that his character growth has taken him in. And I think what a lot of the sort of angry dude bros on social media are angry about is they want angry Hulk and angry Abomination beating the shit out of one another, and that's just not the direction the show is going in. And I think it's better for it. I think it's far more interesting what they've done, especially with Abomination. And again, no spoilers, but he's so funny. And Tim Roth is so good at delivering every line that he has, and every line is like properly Britishly cheeky. It's pretty wonderful.
And what's
Um,
and his justification for his past misdemeanors is actually super interesting in universe as well. Like it does
yeah, for
make
sure it
you
is.
think about it. Does sort of reframe the Norton movie when you think about how he was used by General Ross to by the military to do this, and his kind of his like 10 years in the meantime, and how what he's done to control this. It's just so funny and it's so nice. I don't want to talk about it because it's a spoiler, but it's not what you would expect at all from including Abomination in a 2022 show. But they've
Well, I mean,
done
it is.
again. They're using it as a really interesting story point.
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't though, because I had an interaction with one person on Twitter who was like, "This person, he hasn't had any growth," and I'm like, "Okay, first off, I know for a fact you haven't seen the episodes, so that's one thing. But also, did you not watch Shang-Chi? Like, he's in Shang-Chi, and that is a pretty perfect lead-in to where he's at in these episodes. Like, he clearly has grown. Just say he's grown in a way you don't want. Like, say he's grown in a direction you'd rather he didn't. That's a much easier way to say what you're saying without, and that way you're not being an asshole. Like it's just the way it is.
Yeah, but you're
And
right. It's likely he hasn't seen it. He's just seen a picture, right,
yeah,
or a clip, and so yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think one of the big strengths of the show, honestly, is, and I think it's made clear in, I think it's that first scene you're talking about, the cold open of the whole show,
Mm-hmm.
where it starts with Jennifer giving this closing argument, which turns out to be as a rehearsal to her paralegal. And then after this whole scene plays out, she looks right at the camera and she's like, "Yeah, I know what you're thinking. I am a Hulk, but this is a lawyer show." and, and that sets the tone for the whole thing. It's not a Hulk show, it's a lawyer show, and she happens to be a Hulk, not the other way around. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it works really well. And I know there's lots of people out there, myself included, saying, "Man, I wish the MCU would do something different." And here I am saying, this is the MCU making a half-hour sitcom, and it is great.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of other people who I know have said the same thing, who are basically saying, "Well, not like this, though." No, like, and it's just such a missed opportunity for their own enjoyment. And now I'm just rambling about assholes on the internet.
Yeah, I
So that's
mean, eh, comic book anything is such a minefield now, isn't it? Like anything that's not gods punching each other is gonna cause a very vocal element of social media to be very negative about it, which is one of the reasons I barely use it anymore. I just don't. I don't. I don't want to get involved. I don't care about these opinions anymore. I don't want to give it my time. Like
That's
this is a
totally
really
fair.
this is a
You're,
really sweet show. It's really really sweet.
and I love
Very
I love the exploration of the legal ramifications of being a superpowered person
hmm
is super fascinating. There's a, without spoiling it, there's a lawsuit that Wong has to bring at one point. Wong, the
hmm
Sorcerer Supreme from the Doctor Strange movies, files a lawsuit, and it is A, it's really funny, and B, it's also just like a fascinating thing that he has to do, and it like you wouldn't necessarily think about that. Plus, that
hmm
episode introduces, and I'm not going to spoil it, but I think the funniest side character in the whole show, um, which is someone whom I wouldn't think would be funny, but she is so funny.
No, like
Yeah,
who's that actress? Well, anyway, the actress who took that part and ran with it, and the writers as well. Don't forget that. I don't believe how they've managed to turn the most what could have been easily someone as the most annoying person in the world is actually someone I want to see more of now. Like with Wong,
yeah.
it's almost like a perfect foil to Wong's character, and
Well, for all of them, really.
I just want to I just want to watch them watch stuff. Do you, and you know what that means, but
Yeah, I do.
like I just want to watch more of them talking about a certain
Yeah,
show they like. So anyway,
yeah. And I mean, without spoiling it, although I mean, see, episode one is out now, so I'm sorry if you haven't watched it yet. You definitely should. But the post every episode of this series, at least the ones we've seen, all have like a
mm,
mid credits stinger, and the mid credits scene in the first episode might now be my favorite like post credits scene of any Marvel project ever. Because it literally just involves there's like an episode long joke where Jennifer is talking to Hulk and she's basically trying to be like she's basically making the argument. It's not made clear until the end, but she's making the argument that Steve Rogers must have been a virgin. And at the end, when Hulk finally said, like they're drunk and he finally breaks down and says, "Nope, Steve told me that he, had sex. He lost his virginity in 1943," and she just switches gears and she's like, "I knew it, Captain America, fuck!" Just like it's
cold cut.
and it cold cuts away from her actually swearing, but like it is such a perfect moment, and it's such a just in terms of like their relationship, but also just in terms of like maybe we can look at the MCU in different ways, like
hmm hmm
it's such a well delivered line, and it's so it's for such a what is ultimately such a lighthearted moment. It actually like made me look at things a different way in the MCU, which the MCU hasn't managed to achieve in a long time. So great show.
Yeah, it is. I have one worry, which we're not going to know for like 5 weeks now, I guess. But the antagonist is played by Jamil,
Mila
she
Janelle, yeah.
plays Titania, and Titania is a super strong influencer. So we learn very quickly in the second episode, I think, that she is basically has very strong physical powers, and she uses it to be like an Instagram influencer and like famous person.
Which I gotta
And
say is a pretty great refactoring of the character
yes,
from her
uh,
comic book roots.
oh,
Uh,
okay. I
like,
don't know.
I mean, in the
Uh,
comic books, she's just really strong. So I think,
right. Oh,
you
okay.
know,
That's good framing.
yeah,
My worry is that this show, which has very clearly decided not to be about gods punching each other, is I worry that you've got a strong, massive green female who is going to end up in a fist fight with another strong, over strong, super strong female. I hope they don't resolve this with fighting, because this show has already showed us that it doesn't want to be that show. And there's been a couple of things that I've seen before that have just used another like choreographed fist fight to solve what they're doing. And this show has clearly shown that it's a different kind of show. It's not like I say, gods punching each other. It's something different, and I would like the resolution to be different as well. And I hope they don't fall into the trap of just going for a fist fight to solve what they're trying to solve. But we'll
yeah,
see. We'll know.
I get that. I would also say that I worry about that a little bit as well. But Titania does show up in the first episode, and She Hulk defeats her with like complete ease, right? Like, there's no. You could maybe make an argument that Titania was maybe not prepared, but also like it's a one punch fight. Like, there's no strife there. I think that's why, and without again getting into spoilers, there is set up for a conflict between them at the end of the fourth episode that is not a fist fight. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's super interesting. And I really hope the show just keeps leaning into the fact that it's ultimately a single female lawyer show and not a
Yeah.
single female Hulk show.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel
And
like, I mean, based on what we've seen, I feel like that's a pretty safe bet.
yeah, I hope so because it's well written so far. I will say the fourth episode is a bit all over the place in terms of focus. That the other three aren't, but it's still very much written to be that show in a very intelligent way. So I hope it sticks to its guns.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't agree. I thought the fourth episode was really well put together as well.
Oh, really?
The whole thing is directed by the first four are all directed by the same person, Kat Coiro, who is also the wife of one of the guest stars, who I'll tell you later. Um,
Mm.
but there's only two directors for the whole series, Kat Coiro and Anu Valia. And there's several writers, but there's only two directors. So I feel like hopefully it maintains some tonal consistency and consistency to its premise. And I think that's a pretty safe bet given what we've seen so far. We've seen 4 out of, I believe, 9 episodes. So we've seen
All right.
a lot of it, right? So I think it's a I'm choosing optimism. I'm choosing to believe that
Yeah,
it's going to continue to be consistently good, because it is
yeah.
very consistently good.
It's
And
lovely.
as with Ms. Marvel before it, it's a bit of a bigger swing from the MCU, and I kind of love it for that.
Yeah, and like Miss Marvel, it's just very sweet at its core as well. It's not when you compare it to a lot of other comic stuff that just wants to frown a lot, and it's having a lot of fun with its premise, and the same way Miss Marvel did. So fingers crossed that it stays that good, really.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, it's
What?
Tatiana Maslany show. She is incredible. She is so great in this. So watch it for her, if nothing else.
Yep, proud Canadian person too.
Hmm.
So there's some talk that Deadpool is going to be in the MCU at some point, because of course he is. But uh, Deadpool, the character, is from Regina, and Tatiana Maslany, the actress, is from Regina. So maybe there'll be some crossover there, and they both break the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And contrary to Dude Bro popular belief, She-Hulk's been doing it for longer. So,
Oh God, they're not arguing about that, are they? Oh
oh,
Jesus
they're Dude Bros, of course they are.
Christ! Who broke the fourth wall first? Let's go. Let's talk about the Greeks, shall we? Should we go back? How far
Yeah,
back do you want to go? Okay, so
yeah.
are you starring this yet, or should we wait until it's finished?
I mean, ultimately, maybe I would say that to give it like a proper rating, I would need to see the whole story. But I would say that
Mhm.
of what we have seen, I would give a 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I'm the same. Exactly the same. It's really fun.
Right? I mean, the end of any story is a pretty big factor in this. Although it is very much a TV show, and every episode has a very distinct beginning, middle, and end.
Hmm.
The ones I've seen so far, I've enjoyed very much. Um, to give it a rating on a whole would not be fair, but again, what I have seen so far, it has been great, and I can't wait to see more.
Yep, totally agree.
Yeah,
Good.
good. Well, that's
So
where
what do
we're
you,
at.
now next week I'm not here because I'm on a boat, motherfucker. Don't you ever forget? Like, I'm on
That
I'm
is
going with my
true.
flippy puppies. I'm going on a cruise with my family because it was a gift, and so we're going. We're going to
Yeah,
Alaska, and this week's cruise in Alaska. There's only 2 days where we're actually sailing because it turns out Alaska's just right there.
that's
So
true. Yeah,
we're going to go and look at some icebergs, and we're going to look at some huskies, and more importantly, all the food and most alcohol is included. So I'm going to just jabber the hut my way through a cruise for a week. So
yeah. That sounds great.
you have a special guest next week, I gather.
Yeah, if all goes to plan, we will be me and Rachel Hope from Contra Zoom Pod, who subbed in for you last time.
She
When
was
we
so great last time, like
Yep.
annoyingly so. Like Rachel, just dial it down like 50%, so I don't feel so bad when I come back. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's great.
don't do that though, because it's a great show. So yeah, and we'll be talking about 2 new movies, the details of which are still being worked out, but they are. So I don't want to like give it up unless they don't happen for some reason. But
Mhm.
yeah, it'll be me and Rachel next week, and then I'm on holiday the week after that, so we have to figure out that
Oh,
week is
okay.
not yet planned. So, but yeah,
Where are
we
you?
may have next week it'll be me and Rachel, and the week after TBD. So
Where are you going?
we're just going to see my in-laws.
Oh,
So
lovely.
yeah.
Good. Well, thank
Uh,
you for listening.
Yes, thank you for listening. That is the end of the show. We'd like to thank everyone who is listening. I know we have a number of new listeners in the last couple of weeks. Thank you, everyone, for subscribing. If you've liked what you've heard, please consider giving us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice. That there are many things you can do to support us, including a Patreon, but that is probably the thing that does us the most good, weirdly enough. If you would like to contribute, though, we do have a Patreon that'll be linked in the show notes. And if you go to awesomefriday.ca, you can find streaming links powered by Just Watch for both of these titles. Those will be updated as availability changes. So that, for example, although Alienoid won't have a streaming link just yet, when there is one, it'll be there. So if you're listening to this in like 2023, go to the website. There will be a link. Yeah, we produced this here in Vancouver on the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. And that's it. Thank you for joining us on this awesome Friday.
Thank you.